Please raise your hand if you remember where you were when 2 planes crashed into the World Trade Center on September 11th, 2001. About probably 90% of you may lower your hands. Thank you. You may notice that I did not raise my hand. And no, not because I'm up here speaking, but because I was still in diapers. Yet that event, which created so much loss and changed the fabric of our society forever, also marks the first major tragedy of my lifetime. Now, please raise your hand if you remember where you were when you discovered a gunman had killed 20 children and 6 staff members at Sandy Hook Elementary School. I do. I was at school. What about the Parkland shooting? I was also at school. The downtown Sacramento shooting in 2022, where over 100 shots were fired, killing 6 and injuring 12 more. I was 1 block away, walking home, when someone yelled at me to run. After Sandy Hook, I felt the shift into a new normal take place. When I ran into my mom's arms after school that day, I couldn't quite grasp how much this tragedy would impact the rest of my schooling or the rest of my life. That earthquake drills would never be as salient as active shooter drills, or that every time I entered a room, especially a classroom, I would look for escape routes. In the 30 years prior to 1997, there were 102 mass shootings. Since then, there have been 406. When the COVID-19 pandemic hit, I was midway through college. While the world shut down and we watched as communities were ravaged by the virus, I was expected to sit behind a screen, ignoring the tragedy around me, as if we weren't in a once-in-a-lifetime pandemic. And to mark the milestone of graduating, I was allowed to cross the stage, alone. Political violence and polarization have also drastically increased during my lifetime. The situation is exacerbated by the persistence of a 24-hour news cycle, saturating our notifications, timelines, and conversations with hyper-graphic images and news stories. I went through puberty during the rise of social media, and I, along with more than half of my peers, experienced cyberbullying. 2 in 5 of us were diagnosed with a mental health condition, primarily anxiety or depression. And now, the Eaton fire, which stole 19 lives and over 9,000 homes and businesses from our community, including my now late grandfather's house and part of my childhood home. An entirely preventable tragedy, presumably caused by corporate negligence and climate change. At the same time, the Palisades fire scorched 23,000 acres, destroying 7,000 structures and killing 12 people, just across the city. My family has lived in the Altadena area for over 130 years. And we are, thank you. We are no stranger to living in fire country, yet the intensity and widespread destruction of the Eaton fire is like nothing we have experienced before, taking so much of the community we call home. But it's not just here, and it's not just fires. The Camp Fire, the Paradise Fire, and the Lahaina Fire were all considered unprecedented disasters at that time. The flooding in Central Texas earlier this year, extreme heat events across the globe, severe hurricanes like Helene, Harvey, and Katrina, so many historic, unprecedented, and tragic disasters that we can't even try to list them all. I am part of a generation raised through trauma. And if I sound angry, it's because I am. Gen Z, those born between 1997 and 2012, have lived through unprecedented disaster after unprecedented disaster our entire lives, and we are exhausted by the status quo. We often feel the brunt of the impact, but have no stake in the game as our futures are gambled by those in power. And this is not to say that other generations do not have their own challenges and extreme hardships, especially millennials. But the frequency, severity, and scale of tragedy Gen Z has experienced before even turning 30 significantly impacts our identity and place in the world. There are many myths floating around about Gen Z, being lazy, hyper online, flighty, and selfish. But I'm here to tell you that it's not true. What we are is tired. You would be too if you experienced everything I just mentioned and more before your frontal lobe has fully developed. But from these unparalleled tragedies comes a generation that will advocate for what they want, be aware of their environment, protect their mental health, and yes, take breaks. We continue to persevere and push against norms and systems that do not operate in our community's best interest. We've been conditioned from the very first of these events to take action quickly and often out of fear that no one else will. And we do this out of rage and just as equally out of love. After the Eaton fire, 4 Gen Z women, of which I am so grateful to be a part, came together to form the Altadena Recovery Team, or ART, and do what we could with what little resources we had. Starting in the front yard of a home saved from the fire, we distributed hygiene items, clothing, baby products, and anything else we could get our hands on. But we were not alone. Friends from elementary school through college showed up on the ground to volunteer, and we were bolstered by donations spread on social media accounts across the country, raising $20,000 in 2 weeks, primarily by Gen Z. Now, 10 months after the fire, we've raised almost $250,000 for our community. At ART, our goal is to amplify, restore, and transform. We recognize that we must amplify the needs of our community and the work being done on the ground right now. We must also restore the hope, mental health, and physical structures of the community that raised us. However, in order to transform, we must change the way we traditionally think about solutions in an ever-changing world, ensuring no voice gets left out or left behind as we plan for our future. And as nearly every other generation's little sibling, we know what that feels like. ART is nowhere near the only Gen Z-led team that cropped up after the fire to help our community heal. The amazing young lady that you all have heard about at Altadena Girls, who started an inspirational nonprofit at 14 years old. Or my friends who led the Arco Distro community supply drives for months after the fires. We may be underrepresented in many conversations, but it's not because we are not capable or lack interest. Altadena's Gen Z community is living proof that when given the chance, not only do we take action, but we stick around to see it through. Gen Z has channeled our frustration about these deepening crises to create a space built out of love. And we don't want to do it alone. So, we invite our community in to heal and rage with us. Thank you. Thank you.